To say that the president retweeting a conspiracy theory connecting the Clintons to the death of Jeffrey Epstein is a surprise, not so much. I mean,
in one sense, you could say, what else is new? He was the birther conspiracy guy. He said millions of illegal aliens cost him the popular vote. He thought Justice Scalia's death was fishy. But still, when you read something like that, this president accusing another president of complicity in murder, that's what we think other countries were like when they would jail or execute political opponents. And the barriers that are not just pushed but crashed, combined once again, with the massive silence of his own party, in one sense, I think just leaves you as though you've been poleaxed. It's like, did I really read that?
Yeah.
Am I really hearing this from a president of the United States? The sheer overreach, in some sense, protects him because you almost literally can't believe it. It's we don't know how to get our heads around it.
Podcast, the weekly pseudo-academic pop culture analysis roundtable with drinking and swearing. My name is Christopher Maverick, but you can call me Mav, and I am once again here with my co-hosts, Wayne and Hannah. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Mav.
It's weird.
It is weird. We are
just so people know, we are social distancing.
Yes, we are day 13 of the coronavirus self-quarantine, self-isolation, social distancing.
Based on the way we record this, we've been social distancing for about a year and a half now, too, going on 2 years.
Well, sure, but
really going to be 13 days by the time this comes out. And how are we counting that?
Yeah. This is based on when we recorded. Yeah, the first one was day 6. This was day 13. Yeah. That's what it is.
I don't do math. The days just blur together.
Yeah. So, you can hear him laughing. So I will introduce our guest before I introduce the topic. This is Tony Norman, friend of me and Wayne's.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, what's going on? Good to be
Welcome
here. Nice to meet you, Hannah.
Tony, what do you do? So
Me, I'm a disreputable newspaper columnist. I write for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I do a general interest column. I write about politics and pop culture and race and all that good stuff that gets me hate mail from all the various trolls in Western Pennsylvania. So that's what I do.
Well, look, you can write about anything. Once I wrote a review of Twilight New Moon in college. The days really do blur together. And I said, with the content that it was given, they made the best movie they could. And it got people angry from people who hate Twilight and also people who love Twilight. So,
of course,
I can only imagine what you get.
I'm doing something wrong, Tony. I have written how many articles for you in the last 6-7 years? I have yet to get hate mail.
No, well, because, you come across as very reasonable and all that. Whereas for me,
I'm not writing public opinion. I'm not writing anything real controversial.
Right. And also my photograph runs above my column. So that creates his own sort of, let's just say, energy.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
What do you mean, Tony?
I don't know, Mav. What do you think?
It's almost like you think there are racist people on the internet.
No. Perish the thought.
Yeah. Well, that's actually not the worst segue into the topic this week.
Good point.
All things considered. So this is kind of it's a weird one. It's sort of an idea that we had we have an idea board for the show, and it's an idea that we had months ago, and it was like, well, we need to find a good time when there's a good angle to talk about essentially fake news to start with. And then a worldwide pandemic broke out and and suddenly became important. And it's like, okay, we're doing this show now. But it wasn't I didn't start with just the idea of it being fake news. And I hate that term mostly because of the person who popularized it. I'm better off with the idea of bullshit, but whatever. It's the thing that they were talking about. But when I thought of it originally, I was thinking of what I call news by meme. Tony, You are, would you call yourself a reporter or a columnist? You'd say columnist.
Well, I'm a journalist, but my primary mode of expression is a newspaper column.
Right.
There are different kinds of journalists. There are non-opinion journalists. Those are the folks who cover City Hall, or will report on the fire in Baldwin, or cover the assassinations, in an objective, in a non-subjective way. And then there are opinion writers. That would be columnists. That would be editorial writers. The people who make a point to say, I think this, or we think this, some sort of subjective opinion or evaluation.
And my understanding is, he said as though he doesn't really know. There are, even for your paper. Now, I'm not making a judgment call about the.
Oh, feel free.
No. I'm intentionally not going to for a reason. Even at your paper, even at, let us say, Fox News, right? There are, and you wouldn't believe it, but there are rules about what you might and might not do as far as outright lying goes. Like, if you say something's a fact, you're supposed to, I don't know, do some minimal amount of research into saying that, if I say there are 10 people, there should have been 10 people, maybe 9, maybe 11, not 250.
Yes, that's true on both the opinion side and on the news side of every journalistic, endeavor. In theory, when it comes to fudging things, you're most likely to see that on the opinion side of the ledger, at whether it's a newspaper or a network or whatever. So that doesn't make it right, but that's where you're likely to see the fudging.
So where that doesn't happen, as far as I can tell, is the internet, where you can essentially just make up facts willy-nilly. And my theory was, and this is where it became relevant for our show, because, we do a show on pop culture, and if the internet is anything, it's pop culture. My theory is that and you can probably talk to this because you know how the newspaper industry is going, but in the year 2020, people don't so much get their news from newspapers, or even, Fox News is the most popular channel on cable by far, but it's still a small minority of where people get their news from. Most people, I think, get their news from memes. Just, Bob said this, he posted this thing on the internet, and you end up with clickbait headlines, which might go through to a real story, which might or might not have real details. But I don't think people really read those, and they don't really distinguish between this came from CNN, this came from Fox, this came from BuzzFeed, or this came from Joe Bob's anti-liberal weownthem.com.
Like,
it doesn't matter. No, I mean really Joe Bob, or even or Breitbart. But I mean, I see people post stuff. People see people post political opinions all the time from literally like some guy who it's like Politibob or something, like some guy. And it's just like, I have a Tumblr account too.
Right. There's been a great democratization of information. There used to be gatekeepers in the more traditional, news outlets. You had to, if you were a reporter or you were reporting something and you were trying to disseminate information, there were folks that you had to deal with. You had to deal with an editor. You had to deal with an editorial board, let's say. You had to deal with a council of editors and other writers and all sorts of folks who could keep you in check and keep you honest. You also had to deal with the readers and with the people you were writing about, because there were always ways for them to hold you accountable through lawsuits or whatever. Now with the internet,
you just got to get lucky.
Yeah, exactly. It's so strange. One of the strangest things that ever happened to me was, over my column, like I said earlier, my picture runs. And one day, one of my colleagues sent me an email and said, "Hey, Tony, do you know that there's someone who appropriated your image and they're using it as their avatar, and they're just talking shit about all sorts of stuff all over the internet. There's your face over some asshole's opinions." I can't tell you how violated I felt. I tried to, track this guy down, and he was finally, after a little bit of prodding, he did replace that avatar. But he just decided randomly to use my face. and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't sue them. It was just like,
that's wild.
Free expression.
And it's weird. I mean, you're not that famous. I mean,
Right.
you're relatively well known here.
Right.
You're
Right.
so for people who are not from our hometown, not from Pittsburgh, Tony is a very popular columnist in the city of Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
You're certainly Pittsburgh famous.
Yes.
Right. Pittsburgh famous.
Limited
Maybe a little
public
bit.
figure.
Yeah.
Right. Like maybe a little bit of Pennsylvania famous. I won a lot of big Pennsylvania awards, but more famous here. My column runs in Philadelphia too, but in a smaller outlet.
Right.
But to be fair, Mav and I can claim a certain amount of Pittsburgh famous.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And also, to be fair, that has happened to me.
Right.
Which is odd. Now, I mean, I've had people impersonate me as an internet as an internet personality and as a professional wrestler.
Wow.
Like, why? Like, seriously, there are better choices. It's not a big deal, but yeah, there's nothing.
Well, it's a cool name. Someone's like, I am the great Chris Maverick, and they're a wrestler or some shit.
Yeah, and I was, no, it's not. I mean, have you looked at my pro wrestling wrestler? I was not great. Okay. It was not like I wasn't actually good at it. I was entertaining, maybe, but like no, like there are better.
Were you a villain?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Most of my career was villain by far. But yeah, it is a weird thing. I mean, yes, there's certainly the impersonation issue. Wayne, a friend of ours, Sarah, one of my models, when I was also a photographer for a while, for people who don't know that, we had a picture of her in a Steelers jersey. It was like a cheesecake sexy photo of her in a Steelers jersey that we'd done for a website, and some random strip club stole it and put it in print ads for when they were holding a Super Bowl party.
Wow.
And some friend of Sarah's saw it and she'd moved to Philly by then. She wasn't even living here anymore. And it's like,
how mortifying.
And she was like, "Oh, are you back? Are you working at?" I'm not going to say the club name. And she's like, "No, I'm not back." And what? And so and there was, and they pulled it from the internet, but they'd run it into paper. Like, what are you going to do? And she's like, and they're like, "Well, we thought this was public domain." And I'm like, it literally says Christopher Maverick Photography at the bottom of the photo that you cropped out. You don't know her. She does not work there. She will not be. And it didn't say she will be appearing. It said, "Come to such and such the Jiggly Rooms, Super Bowl party," and it was implied.
It was implied.
Yeah,
it was implied.
So, but even beyond that, Hannah, you'd mentioned Breitbart. That is one, to be fair and balanced on this show, which we do not try to do. But I mean,
we're an opinion show.
Yeah, we don't try to be. We're very smart people who are very clear, and even the four of us when Katya's here, we don't agree on things pretty much all the time. That's the show, is us arguing with each other. So, but we're all fairly liberal.
Hey, but the thing is that we live in a world of fact and reason and logic.
Yes.
Whereas
we are.
I do not believe in giving most of the right wing arguments their quote unquote due, because it's to pretend that, for example, that racism is a valid thing you can argue over, and I'm not going to do that. So you try and tell me that good people.
Yeah, we argue whether or not Riverdale or The Good Place is the best show, not whether putting in kids in cages is a good idea.
Yeah, and to be fair, we only humor Hannah just because but obviously it's Riverdale.
I am right. Okay, everybody looking for something to do, go watch The Good Place. If you haven't already, you will see that I am objectively correct.
Have you seen the last 2 episodes of Riverdale? They were great. The last couple episodes of Riverdale.
I haven't seen this week yet, but I'm looking forward to it for my own glam reasons.
I'm not as steeped in the sort of the nuances of kiddie pop culture like you guys are. But I will. Very deep show, I will say that I accidentally last week. One of the perks of my job is that I get tickets to all the upcoming movies, and I hadn't gone to a movie in a long time, and it was. a sneak preview for what is that movie called where people are hunting?
The Hunt.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, let me go see The Hunt. That might be something worth writing about or whatever. And I thought I had all the information right. I went to the theater, I got there. I said, hey, where's the sneak preview without saying the name of the movie? And she said, oh, they're over there in theater, 22 or whatever. So I go in there. And I go up to the traditional seats where the critics sit, which is like in a balcony, and we get a nice view, and the other critics are there. I see, and I sit down, and this movie comes on, and I'm thinking it opens up at a Christian college, and there's all this praying, and all these people are standing around, and there's the guy who plays Archie, So I didn't know he was going to be in this movie. Yeah. I didn't know he was going to be in this movie, and it's the whole thing is like this schmaltzy. I'm 20 minutes into it. I'm saying, when are you going to start the goddamn hunt? I don't get this. And so I lean over to another critic. I said, this is the weirdest movie, man. And I said, what is The Hunt? This is The Hunt, right? He said, oh, no, this is a Christian movie, And I'm like, well, who's going to go see this shit?
Oh, they do really well.
And it debuted #1 in America.
Yeah,
it told everybody.
Yeah, they do real well, actually.
I could not believe it. I just thought, I did stay for it, and it was terrible. But it was interesting watching Archie with a new father in it. Gary Sinise was his father in this one, and it was terrible.
You really should have done was to go see Onward, but I guess no one's seen Onward.
I don't even know what that is.
Onward is a Pixar movie that would.
Oh yeah.
That would be the #1 movie in America right now if we had movies.
Yes, gotcha.
The box office numbers are still updating, and I want to know who is still going to the movies.
Yeah,
it's getting harder. I mean, it's mostly. They're updating. Things are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which means basically mom and pop Nowhereville movie theaters in Iowa. It's real low.
Now that we live in a post-movie society, we'll have to come up with another game next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're going to talk about direct streaming now because, and that might, ironically enough, kill the whole business model of the bricks and mortar movie house. I mean, if people get used to streaming, like movies, as soon as they come out and sit and cut out the middleman, cut out the expensive popcorn, cut out the expensive ticket, and the need to drive anywhere. I'm going to miss this big social experience of going to a movie. Yeah,
but we don't have social experiences anymore. This
is the new world. So. I mean, it might, because Hollywood is going to try to make its money one way or the other. They're going to have to, and they're going to have to adapt.
I want to roll back into our actual topic because that actually matters. So here's what's been weird about it. Obviously, we were talking about, things like, some places will make up facts, some won't. And OK, obviously, I don't have a lot of respect for some news outlets. I don't think all of them that aren't necessarily reputable have their hearts in the wrong place. Because one of the things that I've noticed is there are people who will say, well, the problem with conservatives is, they just will write anything, but liberals, we believe in facts. And that's not exactly true. That's, I think that facts more often sort of happen to line up with what I, as a very liberal and extremely liberal person in my place, but like they tend to line up on my side more often. But I also see a lot of people, again, news by meme. They don't necessarily read the story. You post things and the facts might not really be true. The most recent one after the blog, I saw some people a couple of days ago posting. It went viral briefly. And I was just I do this thing where I'll write a reply to one person, and then every time somebody else posts the article, I just copy and paste the same reply because I'm really I think it's very important to sort of point out when things are not accurate, but I only have so much energy. So people are like, how do you type so fast? I'm like, well, first off, I type 110 words a minute, but also once I've done it, I just copy and paste.
You just cut and paste.
Yeah. So
and you individualize.
So a little bit. I try to be vague sometimes. You'll know do I mention your name or not? Okay, then I'm probably not. But one of the things that this particular one was people complaining about, with the coronavirus coronavirus outbreak, Amazon is suspending the shipment of all non-medical supplies. And some people were like, well, this is great because supplies are gonna cause disease because we don't know how long the virus lives on them and blah, blah. And I was like, this doesn't sound right. I would have heard about this.
Right.
So I did a little bit of research because it turns out research is something that I'm good at. That's what we do. And that's not what they did.
Right.
It's also not even what most of the articles said, but
Right.
people were forwarding headlines.
Right.
What the the article headline was kind of vague because they want the clickbait views, which is sort of a problem in the economic model of how newspapers work today.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you read the article. What matters is that it doesn't matter if you look at the ad. It just matters that the ad loads. And so they do whatever they can to load the ad. Amazon didn't do that. What Amazon has done was they have decided that for the duration of the pandemic, they will be filling their warehouse, not their orders, but their warehouse with the most ordered items, which means toilet paper is getting extra shelf space because it keeps selling out. Hand sanitizer getting extra shelf space. When Barbies sell out, when Moby Dick sells out, we'll replace it when we get to it.
Right.
That's what it means. So you can still buy Moby Dick. You can still buy a Barbie long as they're in stock and it will get here in 2 days, just like it always has. But if they run out of Barbies, it might take 2 weeks to get to you.
Right.
Which, by the way, is how it always worked. Like Amazon has always said, usually ships in a day. And then sometimes it will, if you order something that's in high demand, sometimes it will say probably ships in 4 days, probably ships in 2 weeks.
Right.
It's always worked like
They've
that.
always shifted it like that. My wife happens to work for Amazon. And she says that there is a deprioritizing of books.
Yes, that's exactly what they called it. Deprioritizing.
Deprioritizing.
For warehouse orders, though.
Right.
Not for shipping, which is different.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So there you go.
But that's people literally not reading the article and then writing new articles or worse, just memes that sort of say what they want it to say or what they were or what they were afraid it was going to say. Because a lot of times it's negative stuff that, well, I can't believe Nancy Pelosi said this. I can't believe Trump said this. And Trump gets a lot of it, too. Though, I mean, I mentioned the one in the blog, which was it goes viral every 3 or 4 months. People saying, in his People magazine interview, Trump always said that he'd run for president as a Republican because Republicans are stupider than Democrats.
Right.
Doesn't exist. Never happened. Trump says,
you got me on that. I was absolutely shocked because I thought that was gospel.
Oh, no. People has literally written. We searched our archives. We do not have this interview. He's not the month that it quotes in some of the versions of the meme. He was not interviewed that month.
Okay.
He says stupid shit like that all the time. So you would assume that he probably could have.
It's easy enough. It's easy enough to come up with stupid quotes from him without making them up.
Right. But that one is fake. He never said that.
Well,
right.
I think that, there's we should definitely just talk about the fact that there's, I guess we can call it a meme or just bad information circulating around about the coronavirus, that if you hold your breath for 10 seconds, you don't have it. And people who have talked about being diagnosed with corona said they originally tried this test. So that is false.
Compliments of Geraldo Rivera, actually.
That's right.
That was Geraldo's fault?
He said it on air.
Yes.
Wow.
I don't know if he's the one who came up with the idea.
The fact that he
probably heard it somewhere.
He propagated it.
He probably heard it somewhere, and he has, millions and millions of viewers. Like that is, I mean, again, as silly as it is, I try to not, we don't have millions of viewers. We have a few hundred listeners, and I try to not propagate lies on this show because I think that that's a responsibility to the hundreds of people who listen to us.
Right.
Geraldo's got millions of people listening to him. And he said that on international television, and fuck you. That's just like, why would you do that? But because he didn't bother, and because he's Geraldo Rivera, he can call a doctor. He can call it. Is this true? And then find out, but he didn't. He can Google.
Part of
didn't bother.
Part of Geraldo never came back from Hoffa's grave.
It's just like Twitter. I think that Twitter is a bit better depending on what circle of people you follow. That's the caveat there, than Facebook or a few other services. See,
I found the opposite.
Yeah, well, that's what I wonder, because it's exactly what Hannah just said, though. It's because and this is my problem with it. I think it depends depends on what circle you follow, right?
And I think that Facebook, I think it's partially better because like Twitter might not be as bad as Facebook because Facebook itself will just like let people just publish lies because they don't care. But like, I don't know. Again, it's totally circle dependent because even as I sing towards praises, what was horrifying to me as like I saw things being passed around Sunday and Monday of this week was that people like were texting their quote unquote medical friends who were like telling them stories about corona or like ideas about like what you should do if you think you have it, and then just like posting like unfiltered text messages that just induce panic. And maybe these people are medical professionals, maybe they're not, but like not all of that information was accurate, and I don't want to be specific or link to it to induce more panic. But you know like there's like an unofficialness that we mentioned before, that like even though there's like a democratization of information and like Twitter and social media, and I guess even things like, you know, Google Drive that you can just share with lots of people have allowed people to like organize and provide aid to each other during this time and actual information. There's also like a lot of bad stuff going around that's going to make things worse, and people panic over everything from like, do I have symptoms or not have symptoms, to maybe I should buy all the toilet paper. Spoiler alert, you should not buy all the toilet paper.
I don't even know what that's about even. You know,
I think it's fear.
Yeah,
I think it's one thing you feel like you can control.
Yeah, people being afraid of being trapped in their house, and then what if I run out of toilet paper and can't find tissues, or you know, to quote Bart Simpson, a worse rag on a stick. You know, come on.
To reiterate from last week, I'm always afraid of that. My fear of that has nothing to do with the coronavirus.
I follow a weird circle of people because like so many people this week have been like, I've ordered a bidet attachment for my toilet. Problem solved.
You know, I think bidet sales are going to go up.
I just bought a super soaker and duct taped it next to the toilet.
Well, hey, I mean, what did our great grandparents use? I mean, they used corncob pipes and not pipes, but corn cobs and all
Sears
sorts
catalogs.
of stuff. Sears catalogs, and you know, you don't really want to think about it.
Cats.
No, but I mean, you know, it's. I think there's a sort of an inherent fear that people have when they get the toilet paper. That, you know, toilet paper is a relatively new invention. You know, it's not 100 years old yet. No, and it wasn't even common in Eastern Europe or major parts of Europe until far after World War II.
Yeah, 50s.
You know, in the 1950s, and so it's a thing that Americans, I think, unconsciously associate most with modernity. Do you have indoor plumbing? Do you have toilet paper? And this is a way of saying, okay, I'm going to hold on. I can hold on to society even after it collapses because I have toilet tissue.
Yeah, well, it's if there's a run. So again, as I mentioned on the show last week, I have a regular delivery to my home of toilet paper.
Why?
Because I don't. Again, so this is true. I didn't say why. We ran out of toilet paper in my house one time when I was like 7 years old. And I remember my mother yelling for me to call my grandparents and have them bring us some from the bathroom. And my mother and I will both tell you, never again. I will never run out of toilet paper again. That is an essential.
It was that traumatic?
Oh, yeah. It's just, when you're on the bowl at the time, yes. So we will not run out again. Now, my brothers are not like, neither of my brothers, who are both younger. I have a brother who's 2.5 years younger than me and a brother who's 5 years younger than me. They don't remember as well. They're not as obsessive about it as me. At 7, I was like, okay, always have toilet paper. This is the rule. So I don't run out. So I literally have, I posted a picture to Instagram, in fact, if you follow it, of me getting my monthly crate of toilet paper that I get. But
you don't go through it in a month. How can you go through a crate of toilet paper in a month unless you're just completely full of shit?
I do not, which is the great part. No, I don't go through it. So that's the great part, because there's always there's a backstock, you see. Basically it's about 5 weeks worth.
Well, Mav, the bad news I have is that Amazon has now deprioritized toilet paper.
So I currently have a supply in my home, probably about 6 weeks long. If the world goes more than 6 weeks without toilet paper, I assume that at that point I have already killed quite a few men because society has completely collapsed and the rules just don't apply anymore. Because I'm not going to be the first one that goes crazy. I'll be fine. But like once the rest of you have gone 6 weeks without toilet paper, like the world has collapsed. So I understand the sudden fear for those of you who did not. Because like again, when there's a pandemic and there's no toilet paper, I wasn't out fighting at the stores like the rest of you idiots. I was like, ha, look at those.
I hate to tell you this, Mav, and to plug my own column, but there are certain villains out there, and one of them named Negan. He's going to get your toilet paper.
Wayne threatened to come get it last week, and I threatened to kill him.
No, you wouldn't believe how many old comics I have access to, so I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we all discovered that the best way to screw with Mav is to just take his toilet paper in the dead of night. Well, actually, more like
I love you
like,
both. I will
like
take
9
you out.
a.m. because we judge the world at 9 a.m.
Oh God, 9 a.m. is just about the time I wake up. Actually, so during the hour that I sleep every day. That's right.
Why are you always complaining that it's too early and we've really gone off track here?
Yeah, I don't want to work. I'm awake. I mean, I sleep 4 hours a day. I'm not necessarily fresh at certain times. Anyway, back to like this is going to be so fun to edit. I probably left all that in.
Yeah.
Anyway, just so back to like the thing about the memes being true and not. I just scrolled back. I'm not going to mention his name. This is going to be the week where I get to talk about Mississippi politics before Hannah does. My nephew, whose name I will not mention, but who is a devout Trump supporter, very much so.
Wow.
And again, he's a born and bred white boy from Mississippi. And he will, and again, I mean, Hannah's white and from Mississippi, but I don't mean her. I mean the people that she's talking about when she's usually one to complain about Mississippi. He posted this meme that's been floating around. I've seen other people post it. And again, I've done the copy and paste where I just do the same complaints over and over again. And it's the thing where it says at the time, I'm trying to get, because Facebook is now doing this thing where Facebook has gotten to the point where they now block videos that they detect are fake.
Yeah.
And they will say, this is fake news. Just so you know, here's words disputed.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's actually great. But it takes an hour or so before the computers catch it. So I saw him post it, and he posted it with I fact checked this. This is true. And that was what he added. And it's President Trump, COVID-19 coronavirus, U.S. cases 1,329, U.S. death 38, panic level, mass hysteria. President Obama, H1N1 virus. He hates Obama.
Yeah, of course.
U.S. cases 60.8 million. U.S. deaths 12,469. Panic level totally chill. And
I've seen that.
Yeah, and I was just like,
so bullshit.
All of his friends were like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. No one cared. And I was like, okay. So I literally wrote, you did not fact check this. That was what I added for just him, because he wrote fact check this. And then I said, you did not fact check this because it is not true. Then copy and paste from the time that I had already repeated it on somebody else's thing.
Yeah.
I was like, in fact, based on the other people I've seen post this, Facebook should be auto detecting it to say it's not true in a few minutes. But until then, those are the COVID-19 numbers from days ago. We've had exponential growth since then, because they were from 3 days in and we were on day 7.
Then you had to explain exponential growth.
I did not bother. That's H1N numbers from the entire time. And the 60 million was an estimate of cases, not tested cases, which is different.
Right.
Which is what COVID is using currently. Our estimates for that period are going to be higher once we're done. that meme makes up the number of deaths for H1N1. It was actually slightly lower. It was at the time that they made the meme originally, it was 20. For H1N1, they made up 1329 deaths. It was actually slightly more. Even with their made up numbers, that would still set the COVID-19 mortality rate at 2.8% versus 0.02%.
Right. Right.
Or more than 100 times more deadly than H1N1.
Right.
And then I said, and most importantly, people were not chill during the H1N1 outbreak. Now, he was 9 at the time.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
He's an adult now. Not at all. There was mass hysteria, not to where it is now today, but at the time I wrote this,
paper anywhere.
Yeah. Well, no, but at the time I wrote this, in fact, during the H1N1 outbreak, things were more hysterical than they are now, because this was before all the people were closing things down. And he says, well, I Googled it and I got the exact same numbers from multiple sources. And I was like, yes, you found that meme multiple places.
Right.
And he's like, so then he goes and he's trying to prove me wrong. So he goes to the CDC and he posts the 60 million number from the CD website on the H1N1 outbreak. And I said, yes, his name. That literally says what I just said above, a 12-month estimate of infections versus 3 days of testing cases. Even then, that would still make this literally 100 times worse. And he says, well, if you agree with them, then why are you arguing? So, and here's how you win an argument with somebody who is like this, because I figured it out.
He doesn't sound very smart, though.
He's not. Might not feel, but he's not. So I said, okay, fine. I'll trade you your yearly salary from last year for what I made in the last 3 days. And he goes, okay, I see your point. That was literally what that was literally what it took. I was like, yeah, I don't even know how much he makes it work.
Right.
But I'm willing to bet that he makes more in a year than I make in 3 days.
Right.
Unless you're the highest form of lawyer at a big firm with billable hours.
I am not.
So the only time I've ever, because I just don't care about Facebook anymore, I barely use it. Sometimes I respond to listeners on the show, and that is it. I guess you should feel special, listeners, if I respond to you. But or not, whatever.
Or not.
Feel how you feel. It's like the end of the world ish. Not really. We hope. But someone there are a lot of sites like The Onion, and my favorite thing is that people know The Onion is satire, but they don't realize that all these other websites are clearly satire, and then they post something as real. You might recall that we had the Olympics in Russia a couple times ago. When the Olympics were
I do recall.
And you might recall that people were panicked over this because if there's one country, this country hates, it's Russia. Or
we used to anyway.
We used to be.
Or fill in blanks. I won't go there. Fill in blanks here. But
yes. Well, I just meant currently the country officially is apparently very fond of Russia for reasons that I don't
absolutely.
But you bring up communism, people revert.
Yes, yes.
So some satire website had posted that there had been this cover up of the government and the murders over the Olympics. And they were like, oh my God, look at this. This is how terrible. How could we possibly even go to Russia? I'm like, this is satire, right? This is
I see people who argue that it's not.
No. Yeah. Actually, to her credit, she didn't respond to me. She didn't argue. She just deleted.
She deleted the original post.
She just deleted the original post. She was like, "Oh, I guess this is bad information. I should take it down."
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Hannah, because we have found consistently, whether it's our print readers or people reading our stories online, that there is irony impairment syndrome, there is humor impairment syndrome. There's something about information when it appears on the screen that convinces a lot of people that it doesn't have to be truth that has to be negotiated, that you have to sometimes verify it, even with when it has the imprimatur of an official source like the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever. There are always facts that may need to be double checked routinely, because this stuff is produced by human beings. But at least certain institutions have a certain imprimatur of being more truthful than not. And we have found that it is often hard for people to negotiate the differences between something that's said ironically. They can't often pick up satire if it is in an official, like if there's a humor column in the Washington Post. They don't quite get the fact that it is not real sometimes. And then when you throw into that mix something from The Onion, that is often the most quoted, or I'm blanking on his name, the comedian who writes for The New Yorker. He has to now post above his columns that it is satire, because so many thousands of people would pass this column around as if it were gospel, because it was in the New Yorker. So these are people on the left that are mistaking a satire for truth. And for some reason, there is a profound lack of sophistication when it comes to the screen, and looking at information on screen somehow gives it like a burst of credibility that it wouldn't otherwise get. I think if people were just talking face to face. Yeah.
And it definitely comes from all sides. I have a Facebook friend, sister of a really good friend of mine, and she's radically left of me, which is way to fuck over there. But she posts stuff all the time, and 95% of it comes from those questionable sources. It so supports her worldview. There are a lot of the headlines I read that go, "Oh, that's something I want to believe," but some of it definitely falls in that category. This is crazy. This can't possibly be right. Right. So you check that. But it's that thing of just she really seems to. I can just imagine she's just searching for this information. She subscribes to all these websites that it's that echo chamber thing.
Yeah,
and she just shares it one after another without really thinking about what these things mean or where the information comes from or validity or any of that stuff.
Yeah, and we're in a very tense time. I mean, right now the Democratic primaries are pretty much wrapping up. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion is going to win, and and I'll just say right up front, I was an Elizabeth Warren supporter. A lot of my friends who are to the left of me even are very disappointed, obviously, because Bernie didn't get the brass ring this time. And I'm seeing a lot of misinformation now coming from that camp, which is somewhat disappointing. And especially about now Biden is everyone's third, fourth, or fifth choice.
Sure.
It looks like he's gonna get it.
Yeah. But that's actually how the Democratic. So again, if you're not a political junkie, which I am, that's kind of how the DNC works when it's working correctly. The system's built to make that happen.
The mediocre rises to the top.
And you might not like that, but that's how the DNC does their primaries. If you don't like that, then start a new political party. And that takes a while. You can't just start with presidency.
Right.
Can I complain about the DNC since we're on it?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe though, like, no matter who your candidate is, maybe don't pressure states to continue holding primary elections, like where you have to physically go vote and shut down precincts in a time of Corona, 1, and 2, don't be the DNC and like when I say pressure, don't threaten to take away delegates. Also, there are a bunch of down ballot races that have nothing to do with the presidential election that we should all care about if we want to So remember those, by the way, PSA for November, assuming we're still here in November. Dark humor because
such youthful optimism.
And also Joe Biden, don't tell people it's safe to go vote because it's not safe to go vote. Come on. I saw his
not right now.
And as I saw someone post earlier today, maybe we ought to hold off on this census for a couple of months.
Oh man!
And that's. I mean, again, I was a Warren supporter as well. I've made no pretenses otherwise online the entire time.
Same here.
That said, I'm also, and by the way, I am far more liberal than Liz Warren is. Pay attention to me for 2 seconds, this show or elsewhere. You'll figure that out. I just happen to like her best for very, very complicated reasons that are me. I'm also a political junkie and I understand the system. So when I said, and I have friends who were very, well, what do you mean she's done? And I was like, she's done. She has no viable mathematical path. This is before she dropped out. And people got mad at me because, there were people who were mad at me because, well, she still mathematically could have won had she gotten like 90% of the remaining delegates. And I'm like, that's impossible because of how Democrats allocate their delegates. I mean, yes, obviously, literally, if everyone in the country votes for her, then she'll win. But everyone would have to vote for her if 15% vote elsewhere. And it's like, it's just the math is complicated and the Democrats make it so. So that's fine. So that's it. I was like, so she's done. But before that, when she surged to the top, again, as a Liz Warren fan, I had lots of other friends posting this news article, this headline they saw where Bernie Sanders says Liz is only beating him because she has ovaries. That's not what he said. That's not what he said at all. Bernie, by the way, has said a lot of things which I find questionably misogynistic. That was not one of them. What happened was Chris Cuomo asked him, well, you have very similar platforms. Do you think that she's beating you because she's a woman? And Bernie said, I don't want to say. And he tried to change the subject. And he said, well, but we see her polls went up dramatically. And when she started supporting Medicare for all, just like you did, and now she's beating you. So do you think people are voting for her as a woman? And Bernie said, maybe some. There's probably lots of reasons people like her better than me, but I want to talk about. And he went to the other issue. And that got reported as though he'd said something horrible about her, which he did not. That is a fact. Probably, maybe, which is what he said. He doesn't know. And we knew, actually, he did know because they'd done exit polling and they knew that some people said, well, we prefer her because she's a woman and we want a woman president. So he knew that it was true. He wasn't going to say that because he wanted to be president. So probably some did. And he tried to change the subject. But because he agreed with a fact that there are people out there who did want a woman president, like they painted it as though he'd said it he never mentioned ovaries. Like that was, someone made that headline and that became the story for about 48 hours.
And you'd be surprised how often that happens. Sometimes a headline can be in dramatic counter-distinction from the actual content of the story. That happens more times than not often.
That Amazon thing I said before.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Writing headlines is very hard.
Yeah. It's the hardest part of it's not harder than writing the actual story, obviously, but the presentation of the story afterwards, whether it's a televised story or a print story, the headline has to draw people in. And sometimes there are unethical steps taken to do that. Clickbait is really, really unethical.
I think there are at least 10 unethical steps you can do with that. Number 6 will blow your mind.
I really don't
people
think
do that for real stories. Go ahead.
I don't think I've ever written a good headline in the time that I've done journalism seriously. I think that I left without. I mean, I've written some headlines that were definitely accurate. I think that it's extremely hard to balance being interesting with accurate and also concise.
Right. Fitting the space.
I let Tony write the headlines for my book reviews.
That's fun.
I've given you some. So
yeah. Your last one, I think. As a matter of fact, I can't remember. I think so you were talking about the parody sites, and that is also a thing. My problem with most parody sites is there are a lot of ones that say this is a parody site in their about page, but they're not actually so the Onion will be ludicrous to the fact that to the point that it is ludicrous, and it's relatively easy to refute. There are other places, and again, not giving credit to any of them, which will not do that. And they'll say, well, but this is parody, so we can say whatever we want, even if it's just an outright lie. And I'm like, well, where's the joke? Right. And that's a problem. One, and I was trying to find it, but I can't find it. And I wouldn't have given the name anyway.
I have a conservative friend who big Trump supporter, big anti-Obama person. By the way, it's March 2020 right now as we record this. Obama has not been president in 3 years, 3.5 years. I don't know why, but but it's a lot of, well, this and that, and Obama did this, and it's all hell, and it
energizes them.
Anti-Hillary stuff, and again, fine, do what you want. I mostly leave it alone when it's opinion stuff. But like I will step in when it's a particularly unfactual thing. Well, he posted a headline that was to the effect of, it was something Nancy Pelosi was, it claimed that Pelosi was going to like shunt $1 bajillion from the defense fund towards like Medicare or something.
Right.
And so I responded, and I was just like, okay, first off, that's impossible. Right. Like, she doesn't have anywhere near that power. And second, did you actually read the article? And he's like, well, she's like, well, and he argued with me for a bit about how, she was absolutely going to do this. And I was like, and click on the article. And he's like, I read it very clearly. And it's like, okay, you did not. Right. And he argued with me, and I was like, okay, from the article, because I clicked on it, because the article is literally from a website, all of which are very inflammatory right-wing stories. Like, Pelosi's doing this, Hillary is doing this, Hillary killed Jeffrey Epstein with her bare hands, like things like that. Right. But all the articles, if you actually click through, all the articles say the person who posted this is an idiot who cannot be bothered to read articles because and see that this is an obvious parody site. Your friend is an absolute, like it says it, like it's literally, they're a moron. There's no content in it whatsoever. And then it'll sprinkle in a picture of Pelosi looking mean.
Great.
It was just, but every story on the site is just like, we are a parody site. This is parody. No rational person would believe a headline like this. The person who posted it is stupid. And then and so like finally I copy and pasted, from their about page into a comment, and then the entire post went away within 1 minute.
Wait a minute, you mean he was still arguing with you? He was still claiming that he had read it.
Yes, but he's
just a liar.
He was just lying. He was just lying because he'd heard this and he wanted it to be true that she'd done this evil thing.
Wow.
But the entire point of the site is we just post just to prove that people don't read past the headline. Like, the entire body of the story was it was why this can't happen. And then lots of insults towards whoever would post an article from that site.
Well, when you remember what that website is called, let me know, because I will love the
if I can find it. Yeah, if I can but all the stories are like that. And I was like, that's
incredible.
Kind of brilliant. I mean, and I can't decide if it's brilliant parody or not, because
it's not parody. I mean, it's a social science experiment that proves a particular point.
It does, but also, like, since they know that people are just forwarding the headlines, they're also just creating inflammatory headlines that are just going around.
But then some people are going to click on it and they're going to see, holy smokes, and they're going to be embarrassed. And maybe,
because my friend and true. Nobody who was arguing had clicked on it until I did.
And then the whole post just disappeared.
Oh, that's why I'm having trouble finding it right now.
Oh, wow.
So
we talk about bad memes, but basically that's just a fancy way of saying that our species falls for propaganda. And that goes back to the very moment we first became literate, that we first made, symbols on cuneiform. I can never pronounce that. The first time that we learned how to make marks on papyrus and to basically preserve our thoughts as a species. I mean, there's always been propaganda.
I'm pretty sure some of those buffalo on the cave walls weren't really that big.
Right. Exactly. It does go back to the cave walls. It goes back to symbols and because people have always tried to have an advantage over the other people they were conveying information to. And that's not to reduce all human communication to some sort of cynical interaction here. I mean, I think that most of our communication has been, throughout history, has been an attempt to pass on, correct information or stories that were meant to enlighten or whatever, and so now here we are, post-modernity, and everyone has access to information, whether it's true or not,
and the ability to create it,
and the ability to create it. And that's the key, Mav, because any asshole now can write anything and write a manifesto and then go kill people to justify it. On a mass level, kill people. And that's what's happening. This is kind of new in our species. And so, yeah, that propaganda, that thing that would have just been harmless, sort of standing on a box in Hyde Park and ranting, is now, attracting an audience of engaged people. Go on YouTube and you see all sorts of fucking nonsense that never, ever would have gotten you would have been interesting in a funny farm. Well, now it's when it costs money,
and this is sort of a weird thing. Like, you end up with a lot of people. Like, I've found that using Snopes to debunk things doesn't work as well as you want to. Because
that's a liberal bastion.
As this PolitiFact or any fact that disagrees with you is apparently not a fact now.
Right. George Soros owns that. Right?
Yeah, and it's like no, facts matter. But I've also found that. So here, I'll give an example. I mentioned in the blog, and this one bothered me because I fell for one the week that I wrote the blog, which was. I posted the story about, for people who don't know, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson tested positive for coronavirus while in Australia filming a movie. And there was a story that came across, and I read it on, I read the website because I don't just forward headlines. If I forward something, it's because I paid attention. And it was about hospital staff to amuse him while he was in the hospital, made him a Wilson ball from Castaway, and there's a picture of him holding it just to amuse, and it was a gift to Tom Hanks while he was in the hospital. And I posted, and I was like, "Oh, that's cute." That was basically my article. And then and nobody commented. I mean, I had a whole bunch of people reshare it, but no comments on it. And then literally an hour later, Facebook's anti fake news thing tagged me. So I click on it, and I'm like, "What?" And then I find out it is in fact a fake story. I didn't double check with any other stories. I just read this, and it's like, yeah, this is not a real. This is a site that calls itself satire to get away with stuff. But also, it's all the stories are fake. But it wasn't funny. It was just like hey, somebody gave him a volleyball as a present. And now I'm sitting here going, why the fuck isn't somebody giving Tom Hanks a volleyball? This story could be true. Go make a the man's in the hospital. Somebody take him a volleyball. That's funny and adorable. But I posted it just because I was like, I post if you follow me on more on Facebook, on Twitter I mostly just make jokes. On Facebook I post a lot of depressing shit, and every once in a while I like to post something that's just a little uplifting. I was like, hey, coronavirus is bad, but here's a little nice something that happened in the world, and fake news people took that from me. Wow, how dare you?
Your sense of trust now is
I don't understand. I do get because I don't know that I call them memes, because I follow Trump on Twitter religiously, very much so. And so I will often screenshot something he says on Twitter and share it on Facebook with my commentary about it, whatever it is. I'll just say on Twitter, I'll just yell stupid stuff back at him. Because just hoping somebody sees it. But on Facebook, I will screenshot it. And then so on several occasions, I have screenshotted stuff from Twitter, pasted it into Facebook to complain about him.
And he's deleted it?
No. No, he doesn't delete them. He's actually really good about not deleting his tweets.
Really?
Yeah, he is. Very rarely. There's more likely to be corrections. Very rarely does he outright delete something.
That's interesting.
But it does happen, but rarely. And so I will post something that he said from Twitter to Facebook. And on several occasions, I've had deep Trump fans saying, well, you just fell for another fake meme. That's obviously Photoshopped. And I'm like, nah, no, I screenshotted it myself. You see, that time in the screenshot is the screenshot from my phone. Yeah, I assure you it's not fake. And, wow. You just don't like him because he's a boring old white man. That was one of the reasons. So I was like, he is old, he is white, he is a man. I do not think he is boring. I watch him religiously. So it's not a meme. If I'm reporting on it, it's because I saw him say it. You know?
Yeah.
I do have to say, we live in such a strange world that sometimes like I read something that is like a parody account and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then I blink and I'm like, oh no, that's a parody account. And then I read something reported from an actual news source. I'm like, oh no, please tell me this is a parody.
Nope.
And it's
real.
not.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
Which is not to, say that we shouldn't do research.
It feels like it's become increasingly difficult to tell the difference.
Right. And believe me, in mainstream media, at a newspaper, this happens all the time. There are so many stories, a lot of them at the national level, but even at the local level. I mean, there's an element of absurdity that has seeped into everyday life. And, it's been around much longer than, since 2016, but it seems to be accelerating now. And there are things that happen on the news that we turn on every night. And sometimes we just can't believe it. We can't believe some of the things that are most likely said, but even some of the things that happen, you don't believe it. Imagine if you lived in a place like Florida and all the bizarre things that happen in Florida with Florida Man and all the various, you just think about, you become, you become used to a certain level of absurdity just in everyday life. Animals doing things that animals don't do in any other state. People doing things that the stupidest criminals in the universe all seem to congregate in Florida. The things that happen there, and you just like go, is that true? Did this really happen? And I hesitate to post anything from Florida because it really is true, but people won't believe it. And so why even fall for it? So that's my little rambling thing. Florida is a stand-in for reality for the whole country.
It's the happiest place.
The whole universe.
The happiest place on earth, Tony.
That's what they say. That's what they say. And I think it leads uncomfortably into a subject you actually haven't brought up that may be dogging on this upcoming election and ways that can only be horrifying, and that is the phenomenon of the deep fake. That is,
we have a whole show on it.
Yeah, you did a whole show already.
We did a whole show on it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm the one that's late to the party.
No, go ahead.
I mean, the whole idea of the deep fake, that is something that terrifies news sources because there's the rush to be first with information, especially if it confirms a particular bias you have as a news organization. And you reveal this information only to find out that you've been totally manipulated, that the image was something that was really made on, that someone sitting at a kitchen table with a laptop made it, or the recording is basically just a collection of sound from different parts of a politicians.
There are no shortage of clips of Bernie Sanders yelling, so you can make him say whatever you want.
Exactly. And so it's going to take them how many hours or maybe even days to refute it, and how many news sources or how many people, having spread that among their friends and family on the internet will say, this is what they said. And now this is just a cover up. You're right. This is going to undermine the very foundation of our democracy, because people will just feel that, okay, you're just part of the conspiracy. You don't believe it, you're part of the conspiracy. That's enough to keep you up at night.
I'm going to keep you up even longer, Tony, because there's that one guy out there who's going to be using your face for all kinds of stuff.
Yes, it does. Right, exactly. I'm telling you.
And on that note, I think we've resolved nothing.
No, we haven't. I think we've resolved check your sources. Double check your sources. And again, Hannah and I have both taught freshman comp, and the amount of work that the bare minimum amount of work that I expect on a source from a freshman comp paper, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect you to do that on a rant on the internet. It's not, I'm not asking for you to do a publishable college paper. I'm just saying like you can't just say some guy's blog said this and therefore it's a fact. You can say some guy's blog said this and I agree with it. You can't just say you can't just say the president of the United States said it. And I think the current president highlights this a lot.
Yeah.
But that's because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't have done it before, right? Like if I like Barack Obama, but I wouldn't trust his opinion on how brain surgery worked.
Right.
He didn't know what he's talking about. Now, he was also smart enough to not pretend that he did.
Right.
And the current guy, not so much. The current guy's like, oh, I'm an expert on this disease. I'm an expert on the military. I'm an expert. He says that
for everything.
But I trust Obama's opinion. Here, I'll pick somebody I didn't like. I trust Bush's opinion on what Bush's tax plan is. Not necessarily on whether I think it will work or not. But if he says this is what my tax plan is, I relatively trusted his opinions on what his own tax plan was.
Right.
I don't necessarily trust that with the current president.
Right.
The current president disputes his own policies.
He didn't read to the end of the article where it said you're a moron.
Yeah. Yeah. So
right. I mean, in many ways, he really is the typical Fox News viewer, except he just happens to be president of the United States. I mean, he basically
Fox News can get him to pay attention to things.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you guys see there was again NBC News I'm checking facts, but I'm just giving their source. They released a story today where they will frequently try to take pictures of his notes from his speech.
Oh yeah. So I know this story.
He kept calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus
because he crossed out. Yeah, he crossed out.
They have a zoom in of his notes, and you can see he went through with a Sharpie and crossed out the word corona and wrote Chinese above it every single time because
he wants to be inflammatory.
He's an ass. Yeah. So
yeah. So
that's an opinion. And quite honestly, it's a fact.
It's both. It's both. Imagine that.
Tony, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
hey, this has been fun. I mean, I guess you guys are some of the, you and Hannah, you guys are some of the smartest people on the internet right now.
And that's a fact. That's not opinion. That's
it's a fact. It's also not much of a compliment. But thank you.
We're going to use that in our advertising.
Tony, anything you want to promote?
Well, like I say, if you want to, check me out. I'm in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I have a Twitter account, at Tony_Norman PG. And you can find me on Facebook. I have a novel coming out soon, but more about that as we get closer to the date. And
back.
Yes, I'll come back and really hassle you guys for some promotion.
It's worked for me.
Yes. And so there you go.
Oh, that's those in the show notes.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you, Tony.
Yeah. Palindrome Hannah.
You
can find me on Twitter at Hannah Rogers, and that is all.
That is all? That was quick.
That's all you can find me at. I don't know what I'll be talking about because who knows what the world will look like tomorrow, and if I'll even bother talking.
Truth. Boy.
Wayne.
I actually, since last time we're here, I have, it's not new stuff, but it's available in a new format. Many, many years ago, a friend and I self-published a comic, got a Zurich grant from Peter Laird, a book called Grey Legacy. A few years after that, I did a sequel called Grey Legacy Tales, the comics. This week, as of Sunday of this week, they are now available for digital download through Amazon. So if you go to Amazon it's nothing new for my old friends, old fans who have been giving free copies of this away for years. Not a whole lot new there. There's a few extra things, Tony. In the second one, I included the comic strips I did for you at Chatham because they're the same characters. So.
Wow.
So I
gotcha. Wow.
In addition to my novels, I now have 2 comics available at Amazon. So we can link those in the show notes too.
And let's see, you can follow me, of course, on Twitter at Chris Maverick. It's a lot of me yelling. You can follow the show on Twitter at Vox Popcast, on Facebook and Instagram, also at Vox Popcast. You can follow the show's blog at www.voxpopcast.com, where we will talk about whatever we're talking about next week or the week after that. We post a lot of stuff, and you can give us ideas that we can comment on when we're doing the show. If you enjoy the show, and we certainly hope you do, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or wherever the hell else you get podcasts from. And do us a favor. If you write us a 5-star review, especially on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes, I still have not gotten used to them changing their name. Whatever. iTunes, Apple Podcasts. If you write us a 5-star review, that gooses the algorithm, helps other people find the show, and makes us more popular. And obviously, as we are the smartest people on the internet, as defined by Tony Norman, noted journalist. So that will help other people find the show. It will make us more popular, and it will make us happy, and we would appreciate it.
All right.
I would like to thank Maximilian of thoughtForm Music for our epic theme song, building ever so more epically and playing us out. I'd like to thank you at home for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
States just tweeted again, this time saying, I hope all children of America will stand with Tweak in saying, go ahead and bomb us, Kim Jong-dong. We fucking dare you.
What? Why would he say that?